Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We are putting a highly controversial piece of media right under the microscope. We aren't here to argue or take sides, honestly. Instead, we're going to systematically deconstruct exactly how the author built their polarizing argument. Let's dive right in.
Have you ever read something that just instantly made your blood boil? Well, we're starting with this highly provocative statement from an article by Katy Hopkins. Look at this. She openly states she targets children who are a good influence, while actively curtailing friendships with those she thinks will drag them down. It's bold, it's unapologetic, and honestly, it's completely designed to get a massive reaction out of you. But instead of just reacting, we're going to break down the nuts and bolts of how this argument is actually built.
So that brings us to Section 1, the provocative premise.
It's absolutely fascinating how clearly the author maps out her binary worldview here. Notice the incredibly specific, kind of surprising metrics she uses to judge a child's worth. On one side, you've got children with Victorian names or Latin derivations. They're favored right alongside punctuality and finishing homework. But on the flip side, she straight up rejects children for owning an iPad, having pierced ears, or inviting her kids to garish, soft play areas. It's wild, right? It gives us instant visibility into the exact metrics she uses to measure value.
Moving on to Section 2. Reading between the lines. Okay, so our first analytical tool here is known as R1, or explicit understanding. Think of this as the literal message. It's just the facts exactly as they appear on the page, no digging for hidden meanings, just what is explicitly stated.
Now we contrast that with R2, implicit understanding. This is where things get really interesting, because it requires us to evaluate the psychological weight and the hidden connotations of the author's word choices. We're reading between the lines to reveal their underlying attitudes and exactly how they intend to impact the reader.
Let's look at a concrete example to make sense of this. When Hopkins says she hammered my message home, the explicit, literal meaning is pretty simple. She's enforcing a strict rule against video games. But look at the implicit meaning. The violent verb hammered reveals a totally dictatorial parenting style where obedience is demanded without question. That single word choice totally betrays the underlying power dynamic at play.
That leads us right into Section 3, the mechanics of emotion.
By actually mapping out these emotive words as data points, we can see exactly how the author manipulates tone. Take the word quagmire. The literal context is just children falling behind in school, but the implied effect? It frames those underperforming children as this dangerous metaphorical swamp that's going to physically suck down her daughters. Or take tactics. It turns normal, everyday parenting decisions into a calculated battlefield strategy. And finally, cutting off a friendship isn't just about kids naturally drifting apart. It suggests the friend is a literal toxicity that must be mercilessly, surgically removed.
Further dissecting her rhetoric reveals an even more fascinating subtext. Phrases like networking opportunities completely strip away the innocence of childhood play, replacing it with this transactional, almost corporate value system. Meanwhile, claiming her daughter is attracted by the wild side literally frames underperforming classmates as dangerous wild animals. And describing her message as being drummed into them, well, that just highlights a dictatorial approach, basically demanding her kids march exclusively to her beat.
All right, let's wrap this up with Section 4, structuring a rebuttal.
This brings us to the final and honestly most powerful analytical step, R3, or evaluation. This is where you critically respond. You're questioning ethics, exposing logical flaws, and predicting long-term impacts. Evaluation is how we formally and effectively call out arguments we fundamentally disagree with.
The source material provides this brilliant 6-step framework for drafting a structured takedown. It moves so logically. You start right out of the gate with your initial outrage, then systematically dismantle the author's ethics and logic in the middle paragraphs, and finally culminate in a resounding summary of disapproval. It's like a masterclass in pushback.
Let's zoom in on a couple of these steps really quick. For instance, in Step 2, instead of just getting angry about a skipped soft play birthday party, you elevate the argument. You analytically question the ethics of preventing a child from making their own choices. Like, has she even considered the long-term psychological impact this kind of isolation and heavy-handed control is going to have on her own daughters? Step 5 is also super effective because it directly challenges her logic. Remember that child she resented for always being late? Well, Step 5 points out the sheer arrogance of assuming a child's lateness means their parents simply don't care about education. You're questioning her right to pass judgment when she has absolutely zero knowledge of that family's private circumstances or struggles. It just brilliantly exposes the flaw in her reasoning.
And all of this leads us to the climax of the rebuttal. A strong response, as outlined in the sixth and final step of our framework, synthesizes the whole critique into a powerful rejection. A world full of Katy Hopkins? No thank you. It's punchy, it's totally earned, and it firmly closes the door on the entire argument.
Ultimately, learning to separate explicit messaging from implicit, emotive language is basically a superpower. By identifying loaded words and using frameworks like explicit, implicit, and evaluative understanding, you are fully empowered to critically evaluate and effectively rebut pretty much any argument you face. So I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you encounter provocative media that makes your blood boil, will you simply react to what is being said, or will you step back and analyze exactly how it's constructed?